Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the inaugural episode of Life Outside the Ivory Tower. My name is Matthew Scott, and with me is my co-host, Steve.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
We're back.
Back after what? Would this be a 12-year absence?
A brief 12-year hiatus.
Yeah.
A brief 12-year hiatus. So it's good to be back. This is something we've been talking about for a while. And it's finally come to fruition. We finally have the time available just to do it. It's amazing how much adulthood just saps away all free time and hobby time going forward.
Yes, yeah, definitely does.
So first question for those of you joining us for the first time in our return episode. What is the Ivory Tower? Because our show is dedicated to living life outside of it. But first you have to know what it is. Steve, to your definition, what is the Ivory Tower?
Well, the Ivory Tower, to give a little background, after our brief 12-year hiatus, this started off as a college radio show, and we were talking about the Ivory Tower because we were both on the verge of leaving college, basically going out into the real world, and simply put, college, even if you're somebody like me who was older as a student, going to college is not living in the real world. It's not. Things are artificially easy. And what I mean by that is, think about it. You may be living in a college dorm, so you don't have to worry about really, frankly, maintaining a residence per se. You may have like a meal plan, so you don't really have to worry about mundane things like grocery shopping or even food preparation. And frankly, not many people are working, 40-hour-a-week jobs that they don't necessarily want to do or couldn't imagine that they would be in.
Yeah, and this is mainly on campus life we're talking. We're not talking about commuter students or part timers, any of that.
No, because they're
you show up 18, 22.
And the thing is, I was a commuter student previously, but yeah, it was kind of looking at that transition, because frankly, and I'm sure Matt, you had a couple of your professors who were friends, and it was kind of like the two professors in particular for me. They had what I consider a very distorted view of life. One's a tenure track professor. The other has actually left teaching altogether. But like I said, they had a very skewed version of life because they were inside of the Ivory Tower. They were both doctoral candidates, both spent extensive years not only obtaining their education, but then becoming teachers. So, without trying to be critical.
Oh, no, be critical. That's half of what the show's about now.
Well, one of the things I took away from it is, there's a lot of truth in the saying, those that can do, those who can't teach. There's kind of a lot of truth in that. And one of the things that I always took away from it was, it was pretty easy for one of the professors in particular to have the opinions that he had because he was a tenure track professor with pretty much guaranteed employment, state employee, and almost impossible to be removed from his job. And when you have those kind of securities in your employment, you frankly can have a different mindset because you're simply put, you're not subject to the pressures like Matthew or like myself, who we both work for private sector companies. And frankly, if we did something that our companies did not like, we could be fired tomorrow and have little to no recourse.
Yeah, there's
And
no fear of consequence for stepping out of line. And as much as I
no,
hate to say it, fear is a much more powerful motivator than reward is, unfortunately.
it
And that's one
is.
of those things
It
that you
is.
kind of find out when you're living outside of the ivory tower, as
Yes.
far as what motivates people and what really brings them in. I mean, you're seeing a lot of it now in, in 2016 and the 2020 elections of what the powerful motivators are and
Right.
what really move people. I always, when people would ask me like what the ivory tower is, I'm like, it is a place that we all know exists and we don't live in it, obviously, and the chances of us living in it at this point, not very great. Not very good. I
No,
mean, we're
I,
we're we're working stiffs. This is a show for working stiffs. This is the show for
yeah.
working people. And we look at this from the perspective of working people. And
I was thinking about that. The Ivory Tower to me, it's a place where I existed for about 4 years.
yeah, yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
it absolutely was.
I had a visitor's pass. It was a temporary thing, and the sad thing for someone like me, I am paying for that visitor's pass in the form of student loans, because there were, about 2.5 years there where instead of I know I could have worked, I just took out loans to cover my living expenses. And I really wish I just would have worked
Yeah.
instead. But, I wouldn't have had the experience that I had. Hindsight's 2020. But yeah, it's the Ivory Tower is a place that I got to visit, and I'm paying for it now, if you will.
Yeah, and it's not just university campuses. It's also state houses, and it is also boardrooms.
Mhm.
It is places where decisions are made, and we, the people outside of that ivory tower, we have to live by those decisions, whether we have a say in them or not, in who gets to make them. It
Yes.
really doesn't matter. There are people who just, I can't believe I'm using this word. There are deciders, and then there are the people who live by those decisions. And
Yes.
this is the show for the people who have to live by those decisions, whether we want to or not.
And the one thing that I will say to that is, although we get a biannual say in who we get to have those decisions, or who gets to vote on those decisions,
We really don't, though. Like
the
we
system is
kind
set
of
up
do.
into such a way where money, which is pervasive
We don't.
across
We
the
don't.
spectrum, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or if you're on the right. It's pervasive in the system. You think that you're given, as a voter, you believe that you have a choice, but simply put, you really don't. And as much as people do not want to hear this, there's been two really successful insurgent type candidates who have won in my lifetime. One directly affects me. It frankly directly affects all of us because he's the president. And the other one didn't affect me at all because I didn't live in Minnesota, and that was when Jesse Ventura won. I mean, he succeeded.
Jesse
Democrats did not
Ventura,
want him.
professional wrestler.
Republicans did not want him. Clearly, the Republican establishment did not want Donald Trump. But even then, once he, whatever, cajoled, bullied, browbeat, once he got the nomination,
Oh, they all
you
fell
know,
in line.
everybody fell in line.
Well,
And
they
there's a
all
lot of
fell in
people.
line because they all realized, like, oh, we're gonna make a lot of money off of this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna make a lot of money off this homeboy.
And I mean, and the sad thing was, I think it was more of an indication about how weak the Republican establishment was compared to Donald Trump's media show as compared to how strong the Democratic establishment was, where frankly the Clinton machine was able to beat Bernie Sanders
Yeah, and that's, I mean, we
in
can
2016.
we could do 4 hours on the autopsy of
Yeah,
the
and I mean,
2016
I'm not
election.
trying to get into the autopsy. It's just Bernie Sanders, by and large, was running an insurgent campaign. Even though he's clearly a member of the Ivory Tower, he clearly lives in the Ivory Tower. You cannot be an elected official for 30 plus years and say that you don't live in the Ivory Tower. And for all the good or bad that his followers believe in him, fact of the matter is he makes $173,800 a year as a United States senator. He is a millionaire.
That's, I mean, that alone before the
Simply
book deal was
put,
Ivory Tower life. Like,
he is removed from the average struggles of the average person. I think, if you look at it and your income is 3 times that of the average American family as an individual, and then your spouse also has a well-paying job, and you have had that well-paying job for 30 years, you're in the Ivory Tower.
yeah, and let's make no mistake about it, as far as how he got there and what he's done since he's been there, none of that changes the fact that you're there. None of that changes the fact that he still lives in that world. And yeah, is it awesome that he never took a dollar from anyone he didn't want to take a dollar from? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's great.
It's commendable.
Awesome. That's absolutely commendable.
Yeah.
But and that was one of the things that I think that was one of his blind spots where he was in there, especially in this in the 2020 primary. It's, I got a lot of, I won't say heat, but just a lot of people, we'll just call them neoliberals, saying that, oh, he's just left-wing Trump. And I was like, no, he is not left-wing Trump. That doesn't mean his supporters don't want him to be, though. Everyone wanted him to go a lot harder after those folks in those primaries.
It was a visceral reaction. And the visceral reaction is the right, quote unquote, got their guy. We need to have our guy. And a lot of people wanted it to be Bernie because as unabashed, because Trump's, you can't call him conservative because he's not. You can't call him libertarian because he's not. He's Trump. He's a political strongman. As much is Trump literally is Trump, Bernie is that passionate about his beliefs on the left. And I think that's why his supporters wanted him to run, is because he wasn't going to be kind of browbeat, if you will, by Trump. He wasn't going to fold like, so frankly, what every Republican in the primary did. He wasn't going to fold like that. But simply put, Democratic establishment had their candidate and they knew who they wanted to win. And it wasn't Bernie, simply put. Because Bernie is really, to the Democratic establishment, he's too far to the left. Because there are interests within the Democratic establishment that, simply put, Bernie Sanders does not support and will not support.
And mind you, the people don't typically support them either. We don't. Right. We the people don't care about a lot of the things the Democratic establishment cares about, but the people in the Democratic establishment have a lot of investments in moneyed interests, and they want to make sure those keep going. And I go back and forth on whether or not I harbor any ill will against them for that, other than like, hey, like, wait, everybody wants to make money. Everybody likes making money. I don't know anyone who doesn't like making money. So I waffle on whether or not I see that as inherently as a good or a bad thing. What I cannot and will not back out on, and this is one of the reasons that I've always wanted to do this show, is it's about the money. Can we all just admit it's
Please,
about the money? It always
please.
was about the money. Let's
Yeah,
not.
I mean,
It's not about. I mean, as far as even Joe Biden is concerned, I'll go ahead and say it. It's not about uplifting and bringing racial justice. It's about the money. It's always been about the money, and
yeah,
under any underlying situation, it's always been about the money, and that's why like I have these issues with the 1619 project, not because it's incorrect, it's because it's not good enough. It just ignored like the 1619 project. For those of you listening, it's named after the year the first slaves were brought to America, and it kind of
first African slaves,
yeah, the first African slaves were brought to America.
not indentured servants, but chattel property.
Yeah, and it kind of sets up this idea that America is perpetually racist, which even that alone I don't necessarily avoid, because I always tell people when it comes to this kind of stuff, anytime there's a police shooting, anytime of race-based issues, like just keep in mind, like in order for this country to even exist as we know it, in order for the Constitution to be ratified, enough people who had a moral obligation against slavery, yet somehow still owned a good number of them, had to just be like, all right, well, for a little while, I guess it's okay if you own people. Like, in order for America to exist, that happened. And everyone agreed to just kind of kick the can down the road. We're not going
Well,
to talk about this.
it's the Thomas Jefferson quote. Okay, slavery is like holding a wolf by the ears. You don't want to hold a wolf by the ears, but you dare not let go. It at the time, he realized
Which
that.
that statement in and of itself, horridly
Mhm.
racist, by the way.
Oh no, it's horrible. But at the time, he realized that the only way that the North, at the time, which is New England and the South, the only way that they were going to be able to provide a unified front, was, I mean, it is played out to this day. It's the reason why we have a House of Representatives, which state representation is based on population, and we have a Senate, which is based on equal population, or equal representation. Two senators per state. Um, Frankly, that the reason for that was northern states were not willing to allow proportional population representation when slaves were counted, which is the whole basis of the 3/5 compromise, because it would give a disproportional voice to southern states when those very slaves, they're going to be counted for proportion purposes, but they're not going to be allowed to vote. They're going to be denied the franchise. So the compromise is we're going to have one system set up on population. We're going to have another system, and they're going to be equal, set up on equal representation. I mean, that's one of the compromises that had to be done. And the original sin, as it's been called, of the birth of this country, slavery, um, has still not been rectified.
We've
It
never really
hasn't.
gotten past it, and I always feel like there's always a societal ill. There's at least one that like every generation's just like, you know what, we don't have it. We don't have it. We can't figure this one out, and we're kicking
Or
it down.
frankly, it's so embarrassing that we don't want to address it.
It's mainly that actually.
We want to shove it in the corner and pretend like it doesn't exist. I mean, it's one of those great questions. I was a history major, and you can ask, okay, when did the Civil War end? Militarily, it ended in 1865 with the final surrender
At
of
Appomattox
Confederate
and
forces over the summer. Well, the surrender at Appomattox was just the Army of Northern Virginia, which was Robert E. Lee. That was not the entire Confederacy. The final surrender didn't take place really, and it's the foundation for the Juneteenth holiday. The last slaves were notified of their freedom in the capitulation of the Confederacy in Fort Worth, Texas, in the month of June, which that's where it comes from. It's like literally they were the last group of enslaved people to be notified that Union won, Confederacy lost, you are now free.
Yeah, you're free to go.
You are free. Now, the second date that comes to mind, did the Civil War end? Did it end in 1877? Which, again, that's a political compromise. And that's when Reconstruction ends, because the South is basically occupied and placed under military governorship and occupied by Union troops. Does it end with integration of schools in 1957? Where President Eisenhower federalizes the National Guard in Arkansas? No, clearly it doesn't. Does it end with the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, Voter Rights Act, 1965? Does it end there? I would say no.
I would say no too, and
it's
that's
still not. But the point is, we as a country are still paying for that to this day, and frankly, myself, of 2 years ago probably doesn't care, and that's horrible to admit. It's a failing within myself. I'm just to be declarative. I am a cisgender white guy.
It's not bad being us. It's not bad.
Never
been bad to be us.
Never been bad to be me. Never been bad to be me. But one of the things that my own personal life and just going, basically, I guess just becoming more aware. Now, am I going to voluntarily restrict privilege on myself? No. I'm not going to apologize for being born who I was. I frankly had no say in that. But what my counter is, I want everybody to be able to enjoy what I enjoy. So I'm not going to be in favor of restricting myself because I'm a white male, a straight white male. I'm not going to be in favor of restricting myself. I want everybody to sit at the table that I can sit at, because that should be the ultimate goal. Like, I will never know, frankly, the kind of inherent fear that African American parents have to teach their sons or their children. I'm never going to know that. My boys, I have 2 children, both boys. My boys will never have to know that. What I want to figure out is how can everybody get to that point? And it's pretty clear that we have a systemic policing problem in this country, where we're asking police to do things that frankly they should not have to do, where we are ignoring, by and large, the role that behavioral health plays in that issue, where we're ignoring that the vetting that police officers are required to have, there are vast differences from department to department. There is no national database, which again, I kind of have a problem with that. These are people that the vast majority of them are good. The vast majority. If you want to peg the number at 90%, fine. If you want to peg it at 90%, 95%, fine. But simply put, the issue is, one is too many. And if the rest don't speak up, they can no longer be classified as good. Because as a whole, these are people that in our society are literally given the power of life and death. If their life is threatened or the life of someone else is threatened, we as a society have granted them, by societal structure, the power to use deadly force. And it's pretty clear that that power is not being controlled, restrained, applied as it should. I mean, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, how many more?
Yeah, there. We could
How many
same
more?
thing. We could do a whole 3-hour show just reading,
Yeah.
off on names, and that's one of those. That's kind of one of those ivory tower things. Is once you realize that, kind of one of those once you realize you're outside of it, because a lot of people, what I tell people a lot is like, I don't know how to explain this to you, sir, but you're not rich. You may think you are. You may think you're doing well, but you're not rich.
One of the most comical reactions out there, and you know, my political views have definitely changed. I had the opposite views of the majority of my family growing up, and if anything, as I'm getting older, I'm in my early 40s, my views are moving back toward the middle, which is kind of the opposite. You know, normally as we get older, we get more extreme, not really, not less. I'm actually going the opposite way. I'm becoming more moderate. And the one of the things that really
Which moderate from where though?
Decidedly on the right side of the aisle on a lot of issues. Socially very liberal, socially, truly speaking, libertarian. You know, so long as you weren't hurting anybody else, what you did in the privacy of your own home's your own business. I mean, it's got nothing to do with me. I don't want it to have anything to do with me. So, again, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, have at it. You know, that's kind of my issue on, or my stance on social issues. But one of the things that really, and this is something that I always harken back to. I attended a campaign rally. This was back in 2010, and you know, you obviously, you know, you want to support your, you know, support the people that are coming out to supporting your candidate, and you know, you want to thank them. And these very nice people had made signs, you know, like handmade signs. If I had to guess, they're probably both in their 80s. You know, which you really want to appreciate those people for coming out like on a Saturday and, you know, basically attending a campaign rally. And the one lady had a sign up that said, "Keep your hands off my health care." And this was part of the Affordable Care Act.
The anti-Obamacare crowd.
Uh-huh. And yeah, because I don't mind. It was Team Boehner when John Boehner was Speaker, well, trying to become Speaker of the House. Which he ended up becoming Speaker of the House. And then the other sign that they had was "No to socialized medicine." And I politely walked over to them, you know, introduced myself, you know, thanked them for coming out. And then I asked them if they had Medicare. And they both said yes.
It's not the same, Stephen. It's just not the same.
And at that point, you know, I just kind of realized how powerful political messaging can be, because these are people that are on socialized healthcare, provided, you know, you buy it through a private company, but then they are reimbursed through block grants from the federal government. And it just kind of astounded me, because the me of today would say, okay, you realize you have governmental socialized medicine, right? You realize that is exactly what you have. So it's not that you don't want government socialized medicine. You don't want other people to enjoy what you are enjoying, because that is exactly what you have. And I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, because maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but your options are, you're unaware of what you have, which I don't like ignorance as a defense, but at the bottom line, that's what it is. Ignorance is not a defense. Or you're selfish. Those are your options, because you want to either deny what you have to somebody else, or you just don't know what you have. And I can't abide by that. I can't, because again, I don't think that either one of those is a good defense. But yeah, I mean, you see something like that, and then the other more pertinent example today is with the current election that we have going on, and please go vote. That is the most important thing you could do. My ballot is already in. I voted by mail because, frankly, I did not want to go wait in line with the current COVID epidemic.
Which is exactly what I did.
I will pay 70 cents to mail in my ballot, which is what it cost. I did not mind. But with one of the tax plans that's put out there by the Biden-Harris campaign, they state that they will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year, and you see everybody on the right
losing their mind,
losing it,
losing their mind, and it's
and
like,
you want to say like,
how much
I
money
know
do
where
make?
you live, I know the car you drive. This is not going to affect you. This is not going to affect you.
But it might affect me someday.
And part of me wants to say, I really hope it does affect you someday, because if that someday ever comes, then you can damn well afford it.
Yeah.
So I don't like it, but to me it's one of the greatest political hoodwink jobs, if that's a word.
And they're so good
that the right has been able to pull, which is raising taxes on the rich somehow affects me. No, it doesn't. Well, actually, it does. Do you know how it affects you? Overall government spending in a normal situation would have to be cut. And chances are that is going to affect you in some way, in some fashion. It's going to affect you.
Yeah, and like the counter argument to it is, and like it was, as I go back and watch reruns of Simpsons and Futuramas, I realize that like Matt Groening isn't a time traveler. He's just one of the wokest motherfuckers the world has ever seen. And rather than trying to like benefit the world, he's like, I'm just going to use it to be funny and make money. Which again, ain't nothing. Nope, I'm not mad at anyone for wanting to make money. But they did an episode where he was President Nixon. He was like, I'm gonna use the poor I'm gonna give tax cuts to the rich and use the poor as a cheap alternative for aquarium gravel, and use their teeth for aquarium gravel, or something like that. And Fry's just like, yeah, that'll show those poor people. And Leela just looks at him like, Fry, you're poor. He's like, yeah, but someday I might not be, and then poor people like me better look out.
Yeah, and I mean that really kind of sums it up. And I mean the sad thing is just looking at it from my own point of view, with my own interests. The right side of the aisle is saying no to any type of student loan forgiveness, like nothing. And the left side of the aisle, the minimum is 10 grand. All the way up to, we're going to forgive everything.
Forgive it all. It was all raised immorally anyway. It's burdening us. It's shackling us.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, I can go with, they don't want to do anything for me. Or I could go with, they want to give me 10 grand. Well, it's not that they don't want to give me 10 grand. They want to take 10 grand off my cumulative debt. And yeah, that looks good. That looks good.
Oh, but Steve, you can't go taking government handouts like that. You can't.
Oh, I know.
Where's your rugged individualism and stuff? You took those loans out yourself, man. You're responsible for them.
I did.
But it's like, yeah, I know I did. But if I don't have to pay them, I don't know. In the same way, it's like, I ain't gonna fault anyone for wanting to make money. Same thing. I ain't gonna fault anyone for being like, I'd rather pay less.
Yeah. It's, hey, here's the argument. If I walked up to the average person on the street and I said, hey, you have to buy this widget from me, and you can pay either $5 or you can pay $7. And it is exactly the same thing. Are you going to pay 5 or are you going to pay 7?
Yeah, no, it's like, no, give me the $7 one because it's clearly better because it costs
Yeah.
$7. Like,
And the way and here the way I see it is this. If the president can somehow manipulate his own taxes to where he pays $750 a year, or companies like Amazon can actually get a tax return, I want to know. I want it explained to me how I paid more taxes through Amazon than freaking Amazon paid, because I know
right.
I buy everything through Amazon. Please explain that to me. And the thing is, I'm not even mad. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
I want to know how you did it, because I want to do it too.
well, that's their incentive, and they can afford to pay teams of lawyers and accountants to
Exactly.
move things and reinvest in option. I mean, we can get way into the weeds on that, and quite frankly, I don't think enough people listening to this care. But like legally speaking, there are ways around it. It requires a lot of time and energy to make that happen, and that's one of my
have explicit tax breaks put in for niche benefits in specific zip codes. Yeah.
And even just the bare basics, if you're reinvesting it, or if you're the big one is reinvestment. Jeff Bezos
Reinvestment, and also the other big one is frankly depreciation of prior investments. You can write that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the two big ones. And it's like in all reality, like I could probably do that with a lot of my own stuff, especially now with like the show or with being a musician or what. I'm like, yeah, I could write off a lot of the stuff I do and a lot of the expenses, but I'm going to be honest with you, like I would rather just have a life. You know what I mean? Like I would rather.
No, it's the tax code set up that way. I mean, that's why you have it's called the alternative minimum deduction, which the reason that that's put in there is exactly the reason that you're saying. It's like you can take the alternative minimum deduction from your taxes,
The
or
standard
you can sit
deduction.
there and try to itemize everything.
Yeah,
I mean,
and like most of us,
that's what you can do.
just quite frankly, we don't have the time to basically nickel and dime
Nope.
ourselves.
No.
I don't have the time for that.
No. And for the average American, if you wanted to go that route and actually have somebody go through and you submit all your taxes, or you submit all your receipts, and you say, you know what, I don't want the the minimum deduction. I want to go ahead and go and itemize everything. The amount of money that you actually save is usually offset by the fees that you have to pay said tax accountant to do that. The vast majority of people, simply put, they don't generate enough receipts to make it worthwhile. They just don't. They don't have enough things that they can write off, because simply put, you can't write off food. You can't write off fuel. There and those are two of the biggest drivers. In terms of what people spend their money on. You can't write off utilities for your home unless you work out of the home, and then you can write off a percentage of that. So, but yeah, I mean, the system is not designed, and it hasn't been designed for a long time for the average person. It hasn't. It's been designed for special interests, and frankly, the vast majority of people, this is a number easily above 90%. The system is not designed to benefit you. It's designed to look like it benefits you, but it's not designed to benefit you. It's designed to, and I'm not trying to make this into a 1%,
1% versus everyone else argument, but it's going to sound like that in a minute. But that's
about the top 10% of people in this country. It really is. I mean, simply put, where I live, which is Akron, Ohio, for me to be comfortable where I live, and this is not taking into account any debt that I have, like no mortgage debt, car debt, student loans, nothing like that. I need to be making almost another $25,000 a year for me to be comfortable.
Now, define comfortable in this scenario.
Comfortable in this scenario is I basically have an amount of disposable income equal to 35% or more of my take-home income outside of normal living expenses. So that's average rent. That's the average expenditure for food, the average expenditure for utilities. I need to basically have whatever I take home, I need to be able to put aside, and a fully funded retirement. Um, I need to have 35% of what my take home pay is basically hitting the savings account, if you will. Yeah, that's not even close.
So so from your take home, and then paying. I just want to make sure I'm getting your math right. So from your take home, subtract your living expenses and whatever is
Mhm.
remaining. That would be 35% of what the take home was.
Correct. Like
Okay.
I basically have 1/3 of my income left over after paying the average living expenses for one person, average transportation, average fuel, average food, and the big one is a fully funded retirement. And a fully funded retirement is defined as 15% of your income, not your take home,
Of the
15% of your
gross.
total income. And even me, I'll use myself as an example. Right now, I'm only funding 12%
That's more
of
than
my
me.
income, or
That's more
excuse
than me,
me,
man.
11, 11.
That's still well. That's
Um,
still more than me. Not at my
and
not at my peak. At my peak, I was at 11, but now I'm probably at
yeah,
like 7.
and I mean, I'm funding 11%. Simply put, I'm 6% of my paycheck goes to a 401k. My company matches 5. Last year, frankly, it used to be 12, but my company knocked off a point of their savings as part of the new plan benefit year. And I mean, the sad thing is, I don't think I could get by if I put the other 4 points in. Um, as it stands right now, I'm kind of getting by on overtime and bonuses, frankly.
There are so many working Americans who straight up rely on overtime, and
Yeah,
again, I go back and forth on that too, and it's kind of like, what's the point of living if you can't feel alive? Like, what's the point of
yeah,
working for all this money if I go to work, I come home, I sleep, I get up, and I go to work. Like, then what was the point
yeah.
of going to work to begin with then? Um, and I say this as someone who's working 3 jobs and now doing this as well. Um, that really is the crux of it, is of the life outside the tower. It's that life outside the tower now. It's not great. It's really not that great, and I think we try to find reasons to make it great, and a lot of them I just don't buy. I just don't buy it.
Well, the thing is, uh, and I mean, and I firmly maintain this. Could my life be better? Sure,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the one thing
Am
I
I
have to
doing
keep.
better than a good chunk of people? Yeah,
Oh,
probably.
and that is exactly what I was about to say. It's like, look, again, cis white guy, United States of America, not bad to be me. I'm not alternative lifestyle in a fundamentalist country. Um, I'm not Christian in a country that persecutes Christians. I'm not a woman in a society that is decidedly anti women's rights, or a society where women do not, frankly, have full equality. Um, the United States for me is stable. My food supply is secure. I can turn on the faucet and I have water. Um, all of those things together probably put me in the top 15% of people on the planet. I have it very, very good.
Yeah, from an international perspective, we do,
But
and I would say
it's
everyone within these borders probably does too, for the
but
most
yeah, but
part.
it's one of those situations where I myself have had to make decisions in the past regarding healthcare, not for healthcare reasons, but for financial reasons. And I know that if I was in a country less than 100 miles north of me, those decisions I would not have to make. I wouldn't, you know? Um, I have visited countries in the past, and when both of my children were born, I had to have, kind of like sit down conversations with their mother about saving money, because pregnancy in this country is treated as a disability, and figuring out vacation time. And the one country I went to in particular, the maternity benefits at the time were extended for 2 full years at 100% pay. And that was for mom. And dad had 1 year of paternity leave. And the float for the paternity leave, it was done in such a fashion to where mom could take her 2 years, and then dad could take his year after mom's 2 years. And you were allowed to bank this time, meaning if mom has a child and then becomes pregnant or has a child inside of that first 2 years, she gets another 2 years. Dad gets another year. It wasn't 1 year exclusive. It was 1 year per pregnancy. So under that system, if mom had 4 children, mom could take 8+ years off of work, and then dad could take 4 years off of work after that. And the whole reason for that, it wasn't like this was Americans' opinions of this country are that, it's very socialist, but the government.
Well, Americans' opinion of socialism.
Well, yes,
it's anytime the government does something like.
But the government realized that the most important thing that people can do is literally give birth to the next generation of citizens, which that seems like it's some grandiose statement to some, but to me it's like, you think about it, it's like the most important role of a parent is to foster and create good people. So how can we as a government ensure that we're going to put parents in the position to create good future citizens? And in this country, this is and to a certain extent, an unfair characterization, but also I think one that has a lot of truth to it, sadly. One side of the aisle will fight for that child up until the minute it's born, and then you're on your own. And it's like, explain to me exactly how that works. That, before the child is born, you will fight, you will make every sacrifice until that child is born. But as soon as it's born, mom and child are on their own.
Yeah,
to me, that is a massive logic hole.
The issue is we live in a right-wing state.
Center. I would call the United States center right. I think that is a fair statement.
I would say what we consider the Democratic Party on the world stage is that center right. On the world stage, the Democratic Party, by and large, is that center right. Maybe they get all the way to the center, if you can argue that point, but fundamentally I feel that they are a center right argument. The idea that anyone left of center is still saying like, oh, we're not going to do what it takes to make sure that everyone has health care under any expectation. It's like, basically what it comes down to is that argument is, okay, if you can't afford health care, then you don't deserve it. Like, that's what fundamentally that argument, the healthcare argument, comes down to, whether it's, lowering the costs or a public option or however you want to put it. It's fundamentally, you just believe that, oh, well, if you can't afford healthcare, then you just don't deserve it.
Right. Which is abhorrent. There's no other word for it. It's abhorrent. Um, yeah, I mean, I truly believe that it is criminal that the United States has people, and it's a significant part of the population. I believe that it's abhorrent that the United States has people that don't have full health care, or they have, and frankly, I've had one of these plans in the past, jokingly called it, I have don't get sick health insurance, which is, and thankfully I don't have it now, but it was very low premium, but it was very high upfront out of pocket. I think
Yeah,
for
it's
an
the
individual,
safe auto of health insurance.
this was 3 years ago. My upfront deductible was $3,600. So the first $3,600 of allowable in-network medical expenses are coming right out of my pocket. So if I had a cold, do you think I went to the doctor?
No,
No,
and that was
no.
the entire point.
And that was the point. I mean, it was like I said, I had don't get sick health insurance. Um, the only thing I really used for the health insurance was if I had no other option, I used it. And this would be, like a cold, basically like me not being able to get over an illness. The benchmark for me was about 4 days. Like if I couldn't kick it in 4 days and it was getting worse and getting worse, then I broke down and went to the doctor. But even then, man, hopefully that fourth day didn't happen on the weekend, because I'm
Yeah,
waiting until Monday.
because
I'm not
then
going
it
to an
becomes
emergency.
6.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, shouldn't be that way. It is. Shouldn't be that.
What is it? And I ask you this as someone who, I'll just say, as someone that I know, you're basically a former Republican at this point. What
Yeah.
is it about like Republican and right wing framing that just the term I hear a lot is it just tickles the reptile brain and is so like how are they able to take these policies and ideas and pack that really only benefit 1 to 5% of the population and then package them in a way that consistently gets at least 51% of them of the population to be like, yeah, that seems good.
Well, first of all, I need to put another qualifier in there. It's 51% of the 60% that vote. Okay, because simply put, 4 out of 10 are sitting on their hands. But
So is that a way of saying voter suppression is part of it too?
Voter suppression. Voter
Or is that
suppression definitely.
the Democrats being full of shit too, and just being like, you're both full
Well,
of shit, f you
no,
both.
no. The thing is, voter suppression definitely exists. It definitely exists. Is it as widespread as some people on the left believe? No, I don't think so. But are there definitely barriers put in place? Absolutely. I mean, the most probably the most skewed statistic that I saw was the Texas Election Commission basically put one ballot drop-off place per county. Okay, per county.
I
And
think
I don't
Ohio did that too.
and I don't remember the name of the county, but there was one county in Texas that had a population of 1,800, and they had one place to drop off your ballots. And then there was Houston that had 3.5 million in the county, and they had one place to drop off the ballots. And
And then they'll turn around and complain about ballot harvesting.
yeah, and I'm sorry, it's to what person does it make sense to proportionally have the same amount? Let me get something that's roughly equivalent. To what person does it? And is there's nothing really, well, to that is almost the equivalent math wise. I think I have the ratios right. It's almost the equivalent math wise to have one drop off polling place for downtown Worthington, Columbus, Ohio area, which is about 8,000 people. as New York City, which is 8.5 million, and you have one for each, and you think that's equal. It's not equal. Now, do people have access to it? Yes. But then what it really comes down to is, how do you define access? And I guess, do you define voter suppression as the polls are open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday with limited hours on the weekends, and what we're going to do is we're going to have one location where primarily minority, lower income voters vote, because we know that they can't take the time off work? I would say that's voter suppression. I would definitely say that's voter suppression. I would say it's voter suppression by circumstance. Are you denying people the ability to vote? No. But what you're doing is you're putting forth a system to where you know that they're not going to. Because if they
there
have,
is a difference between like voter suppression and voter disenfranchisement, and both of which are bad. Under no circumstances should the state ever be
I now
trying
see,
to.
this is
The
this is
state
one of
should
those
always try to
times.
make it easier to vote. Is basically what I'm trying to get at.
This is one of those times where I still am on the right on this issue. I think that there are things that you can do that society has deemed a crime, to where the state is fully within their rights to say you no longer get to vote. Now, granted, that to me that's like murder, rape, kidnapping, strong arm robbery. Really, outside of that, though, I think you should be able to vote.
Yeah.
and then I would put this too, because to me it makes sense. Any voter or election related crimes, I don't think you should be able to vote for. Because if you're someone who tried to manipulate the outcome of an election, I think one of the penalties should be that you shouldn't be
don't
able
get
to
to vote.
allowed to vote in them
If you
anymore.
try to cheat the system, you don't get to
You
participate in
don't
the
get to
system
participate in the
anymore.
system anymore. Right. So, I would say like those, but like one of the ones that, like, I think it was, what was it? California's got the 3-strike law, and a couple states have 3-strike laws. You can steal 3 cars and lose your right to vote.
I don't see it. I don't
I
see the
don't,
justification behind that.
I don't like that either.
I mean,
Uh,
I've made the argument for lowering the voting age to 16. I mean, I'm
no,
not even
no,
against that.
I'm not in favor of that. No.
What? So why not? Why? I'll just
because
why not?
because then if you're going to lower the if you're going to to me if you're going to lower the franchise age to 16, then lower the threshold to be considered an adult to 16 too.
I'm not, ironically, not entirely against that either.
Here's the issue with that.
Once you get to 16, like you're getting to a point where if
well,
you really want something,
there's 2 strong societal issues there. First and foremost, you're still in high school. Second,
yeah, but
you're kind
of
opening a legal can of worms there. And in the legal can of worms that I'm referring to is, parents don't get along with kid turn 16, parent kicks kid out. If they're an adult, that kid has no recourse. And this is someone who can theoretically be like a sophomore in high school. Like, if paid no penalty, right? Not like have like a where they missed, a birthday, or they're really young or they're really old, they never failed a grade.
and now they're out on their own.
You're setting forth a condition to where they still have 2 years of high school left, and all of a sudden they're homeless. That's not going to happen. I mean, to me, I guess I would like uniformity. And what I mean by that is, I don't like how the drinking age is 21. The age where you're an adult is 18. You can be drafted when you're 18. And to me, it's like, you can theoretically be drafted and go have to fight in a war 2.5 years before you can legally buy a beer.
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. Now, granted, the impetus for raising the drinking age, it was thought that, simply put, if people are older, they'll be a little smarter with alcohol, less bad things happen.
We've both worked in enough bars to know that is not the case.
No,
And
no.
that's generally my crux around lowering the voting age to 16 as well, because the main counter argument is, oh well, they're 16, they don't really know what they don't know what
Right,
they're
but
talking about, they don't know what they're doing, and that begs the assumption that, oh, so people over the age of 18 who all vote are just smart, informed voters and know exactly what they're talking about all the time.
right. And the other thing, if you look at it just from a consequence point of view, simply put, the younger you are, the longer you have to live with the mistakes or the benefits of the policy.
There's also that.
So, you figure that the young have the most to gain or to lose because, statistically speaking, they're going to be dealing with it the longest amount of time.
And the other big thing with it is, statistically speaking, the younger you are when you vote for the first time, the
The more
more
likely you are to
likely,
be a repeat voter.
precisely,
Yes.
the more likely you are to
Yes.
continue doing so.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. Yeah, it's that, and then, ironically enough, the other two big corollaries between likelihood to vote are age, and then regular attendance of a worship service is the other biggest statistical predictor if you're going to vote on a regular basis. So if you're older and you go to church, it's like 85% of those people vote. And then the sad thing is, if you go south of the Mason-Dixon line, that number goes
That
above
number's going
90%.
up. Yeah.
It goes above 90%. So those are what you call your likely voters, and frankly, it's also one of the big reasons why the South, by and large, is solidly Republican. Um, Plays to the base. It's part of the Goldwater Southern strategy. But yeah.
But yeah, circling back on it, because we kind of got off topic. But yeah, I mean, how, as someone who's kind of been in the Republican political machine for a good while, like, how are they able to take these policies? And again, you're talking 51% of the 60% of people that vote. But still, even for that number, like, how are they able to take these policies that, when you really get into the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty, like, clearly don't benefit them? Sort of like we have with the sign early, no socialized medicine while I'm on Medicare. How
You're
are
right.
they? How are they?
Get your hands off my socialized medicine, and you've been on Medicare for 17 years.
Yeah,
Right.
like, how are they able to take these policies that clearly are benefiting 1% and manage to get them to get 51% of the voting population to be like, yeah, that tracks.
Well, I mean, you touched on it earlier. It's I think you said it was Fry. I'm not rich now, but one day I might be. Um, and the other thing that kind of it really draws into is the whole idea of, for lack of a better phrase, the concept of rugged individualism, where I don't need any help, I can do it on my own. Or moreover, and then this is the flip side of it, because this also applies, I am doing it on my own, which is the biggest fallacy that there is. Because, simply put, you didn't build the road that led to your house.
Yeah.
The government is responsible for some things. We can definitely agree to disagree on what the role of government should be and how much they should provide, but by and large, the rules that society put forth to allow for the vast majority of people to enjoy the things that they have, the compelling factor is the gun of law enforcement. It's here's the penalty if you don't.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like this is the
And the individuals are not doing that. That is the role of government. Because we have decided that individuals doing that on an arbitrary basis is a bad idea.
Yeah, and
It's a very bad idea.
that's where, and I dabbled in libertarianism for a while. I'll admit it. I voted for Gary Johnson in 2016. He was a solid. He was a look. He in an election that was between an F and a D plus. D plus might even be generous. I'll be honest. Gary was a solid C. He was a solid C in an election that was where the two major candidates were an F and a D plus. And at no point in there is no amount of grief that anyone can give me because I always fall back on, you know what? I voted for the best candidate available. All right. Don't
Yeah,
get on me because I voted for the best candidate available. The fact that y'all didn't, that's your problem. That
yeah,
ultimately is your problem. And I will never ever get behind voter shaming. I mean, I think that's one of the things that unfortunately kind of doomed the Sanders campaign in 2020. Not from him specifically, but I mean, a lot of Sanders supporters ultimately it came down to, well, you either support Sanders or you're a bad person.
yeah.
And
And
and again,
it
I see that argument because it was one of those again. What kind of person honestly believes if you can't afford to pay for health care, then you don't deserve it?
Bernie also had,
But people aren't going to accept that argument. Like people, they're still not going to, whether it's true or not. That argument is not going to that's an automatic back off, dude. It's
mhm.
the visceral response to that is always going to be negative.
Well, Bernie also, unfortunately for him, he although he eventually did, he had some outsized influence supporters that were pretty freaking toxic. Um, and I mean, frankly, I'm speaking here of the Bernie Bros, which are, is there any equivalence to, what was, God, what did he say? Stand down and stand by.
Oh, Trump,
Trump
yeah,
to the Proud
the
Boys,
Proud
where it's like,
Boys.
are you kidding me? I mean, the thing is, like, the thing is, like I said, never really been bad to be me. I'm a, cis white guy, and if you'll indulge me, um, 2010, working on a campaign, Southern State, conservative candidate, and I originally, from Ohio. At the time, I was living in Washington D.C. And I was asking one of the local people to assist me trying to find a catering facility that was open on a Sunday. And I was able to do it. And they asked me if I had attended service, because it was a Sunday. And I said, no, I not had the opportunity. And the thing is, my job, literally at the time, I was working on campaigns. Time is money. Daylight is time. Um, I would routinely be up at 5:45 in the morning, on site at 6:30, 6:45, working until 9:30 p.m. Very common for like 14, 15, 16-hour days. And this person, she nice lady, sure, but she asked if I wanted to accompany her, and she said, "Well, we're a Reformed Baptist congregation." And I said, "Well, oh, okay." I said, "I appreciate that." I said, wasn't raised Baptist, but I think I said, I think we read the same book and we follow the same word." And she goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And I just said, "Well, I said I'm Christian, but I'm not Baptist." And she goes, "Well, what are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Catholic, Roman Catholicism." And you could hear a pin drop. And she literally said to me, I will pray for you. And the way she said it and the way she phrased it, it took every ounce of my self-control to not say, you know what, I don't think I need your prayer.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I don't think I need it.
that is one step below, well, bless your heart. We
And
all
it completely was. And
we all know what bless your heart means. We all know what I will pray for you means.
yeah,
We all know what
and
that means.
I don't, I've never felt the need to put, my faith out there and or to defend. But that was the first time in my life where I felt that, like, wow, I think
You're
I just
judging me
pleased
for
God.
being Catholic, aren't you?
I think like, I'm Christian, but I'm the wrong kind of Christian. And the reason I bring that story up is because when it comes to the idiots like the Proud Boys, oh, I'm the wrong kind of Christian to them too.
Yeah.
I definitely am. I'm not Protestant. I'm the wrong kind of Christian. And furthermore, like, I'm Polish Catholic. A lot of my countrymen had a problem with their neighbors, 1939 to 1945. A lot of countrymen had problem with their neighbors from 1944 to 1990. Didn't happen to me. Happened to extended family. But it's one of those things I keep in my mind. Like, I don't, even though I look like them, I don't exactly fit all of their demographics. I don't. And I have to remember that, because the president just called on them for support. And that really bothers me.
He didn't even call on him for support. Like, he almost like acknowledged that he already had them and was just like, don't do anything until I tell you to do it, type deal. You know what I mean? It's like he just openly acknowledged that, like, yeah, I know I've got it. It's kind of one of those, and I don't know how much.
Man, the best phrase that I heard, and sadly it's something that I have to agree with. The man is a walking dog whistle.
Oh yeah, and the thing
He's
is,
a walking dog whistle.
and he knows it. He knows it.
And yeah, ultimately, I could not support that. I just couldn't.
And I think someone like him has really just opened the door for, and I always feel weird talking about this because, again, never a bad time to be me. He has really opened the doors for the cancel culture people to come.
Well, here's the thing,
flooding
Stewie,
in.
and here's the thing, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this. What nationality is your mom?
Oh, my mom is half Japanese, half German.
Would it have been a bad time to be you in 1942 California?
Probably. Well,
Yeah.
It would have been a bad time to be. It definitely would have been a bad time to be me then, actually.
Yeah, you realistically would have been living in a camp somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico. It'd have been a very bad time to be you.
And that's one of the things where, we're walking over into, the model minority territory, where those people I don't know no matter how you want to find, like, those people got paid. Everyone who was in an internment camp got, I think it was like 20 grand at the time. From the state,
it
like,
was
they got it was, again, it
not nearly equal to the lost economic opportunity, because
they got their reparations.
They got a formal apology from the federal government. They got a check by Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, they got their reparations.
And
again,
one of the
insufficient,
reasons,
but
one of the reasons, though, that happened was because Reagan was from California. That's decidedly one of the reasons why that happened. And frankly, he had a lot of friends who frankly lost businesses, money, whatever, and it was one of those things where it was personally important to him to kind of right that wrong. Because just him in his personal life, he ended up knowing a lot of those people. But here and I guess here's the juxtaposition. That apology could have been made 10 years before. Nixon was from California,
Yeah.
but Nixon didn't know those people, so Nixon didn't care. And frankly, there wasn't anything to be gained by it with Nixon. There wasn't. Well, with Reagan, I mean, Reagan is the last Republican to win the state of California. He's the last one.
Probably will be for a while.
Is it wrong to say ever?
Yeah, possibly ever. There, say what you want about California. It alone is the world's fifth largest economy. To the idea of, and I don't think it'll ever get off the ground, but should it ever get off the ground, it is probably the only state that could secede from the union and actually make it. And that's
no. There's two. There's one other one. Huh?
What, Alaska?
No.
Who would you say them?
Texas.
Yeah, and those are the two.
And the reason I say those two is, first of all, their economies are large enough, and in the case of both Texas and California, they are net energy exporters and net food exporters.
Yeah,
that's the two biggest things. They generate more energy than they consume. Well, excuse me. In the case of California, they could generate more energy than they consume, but their pollution regulations, as well as frankly, the disastrous decentralization of their electric grid, lead to rolling blackouts. And they have the capability with alternative energies, but then also with, frankly, fossil fuels, to be energy independent. They do. And then Texas obviously has both of those capabilities as well.
Yeah, so they're the only states that could secede. So like when people are like, "Oh yeah, let them go," and I'm like, "No, that is a terrible idea." You
other states could secede too. I imagine probably Florida could. Again, large population. I don't believe that they're energy neutral. I believe
but they also have no state income tax, so they would suddenly have to instill one of those.
All right. And Texas, Texas doesn't have one either.
Yeah. They would both have to instill that immediately, and that's like half the reason.
Right. That's
half the reason people go to Texas and Florida.
Hey, look, it's why Joe Rogan left California to go to Texas. I mean, simply put, him doing that put 11% of his income back into his pocket.
And it was also one of those, like, he does a podcast.
And I think also plus for the viewership of his show and his own attitude, he belongs in Texas.
Yeah, he belongs in Texas. Now, I can't say I'm a big fan of the new studio, but I mean, even from his perspective, like, he's not acting. He's a big enough comedian now that, like, he doesn't have to be in New York or LA or Boston. Like, he's a big enough name now where he can live wherever he wants, because
frankly,
he's going to go on a national tour.
With that $150 million podcast deal that he signed, you know what? I think I'm going to buy myself a jet today.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to buy myself a nice chunk of land and a membership at a private airport.
Now, he does not have a private jet. That is one thing. It's like, I feel weird. I feel weird with the private jet thing. It's one of those.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't have to buy a private jet because he probably had it put into his rider that if he ever had to go anywhere, that would just be part of his. They would provide one for him.
Probably, but he was always like, I'm not. Even still, like, I'm not. He's like, I'm not a fan of private jets. Like, it's one of private jets is one of the private jet is clearly an Ivory Tower ownership. Like
that is the penthouse of the Ivory Tower ownership.
At that point, once
that is the 1% of the 1%.
Once you've reached private jet level, like, you are officially you officially can live outside of reality. You no longer have to do this. Like, and he was always like, I I don't like that. I don't want to
One
be.
of the just completely oblivious to the real world statements that I have come across. Well, and it is old. This is probably 20. This is more than 20 years old, and uh, it was the fact that Bill Gates was talking about when Microsoft was behind a digital assistant, whatever their digital assistant was. And he said, you can just put this in your pocket. And then somebody like innocently asked him a question. Well, what about like your keys in your wallet? And then he just goes, well, I don't carry either. And it's because he doesn't have to.
It was one
It's
of
like,
those.
because
Yeah.
here's the thing, like you're never going to see him go into a store because he doesn't have to. Because at a minimum, he has an assistant that does that for him because he can't go to a regular store because he's Bill Gates. And granted, part of it is, I think, for show, part of it is for the folksy attitude, part of it is because he realizes the image that he puts forth enhances his business. But one of the big things is like Warren Buffett, right? Oracle of Omaha. He lives in the same home that he's lived in since like the 60s.
He
Same
does have
home.
this folksy attitude to him, and it's like
And
you forget he's like the third richest man in the world.
yeah. And you like one of the things he does, like if he's having a good day, he will get 2 breakfast sandwiches from McDonald's because he eats McDonald's breakfast 5 times a week. Like he'll get 2 McMuffins instead of 1. And there's like this famous steakhouse that he goes to where they have milkshakes. Now, he does that because Berkshire Hathaway stock is what, $188,000 a share or something
I
like
think,
that.
yeah, Berkshire A is like 6 figures. Even
Yeah,
Berkshire B is like
yeah.
$2,500 a share or something like that.
So, but the point is, he's adding to the image, and the thing is, it's clear that he hasn't had to be part of society for a very long time. But I think it's also a coping mechanism for him to try to remain part of society, because he on some fundamental level has to know that I've not been part of this society for. He's probably not been part of this society since the 70s, but it's something that he has to do, I think, for his own mindset. To try to keep him somewhat grounded. I mean, famously, he still uses a flip phone.
Dude, I'm thinking about going back to a flip phone, man. Like I already took Facebook off of my phone, and it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made, if I'm being honest.
Well, I think for someone like him, though, it's again, it's part of the
It's part, yeah,
folksy.
for him it's part of the folksiness. For
Yeah.
me, it's part of the mental health management. Um, but it's one of those things where those at the end of the day, though, those people are always going to follow the money. And Warren Buffett's the master. He is the master of the long term investment.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah, he has absolutely never paid a dividend. I mean, his whole thing is, we take the profits, we roll the profits, we will go buy another company. We will add to the portfolio. We will buy positions in different companies. I mean, one of the things that's just that I've always found amazing is that he always, I think, on the average, he has bought or acquired outright, I think it's like 38 companies in 42 years. Just buying the entire thing. Like, and for some of them, it was a stock deal to where he gets majority interest. And then what he does is he invokes the contract clauses to where he can buy all remaining outstanding shares. And then they just get folded into Berkshire Hathaway. For other business deals, they're private businesses. He likes he just buys the company. Like one of the famous ones, I did not know this. He owns Airstream.
Airstream, he owns Geico.
Yeah,
He owns Geico. I
that
just switched to Geico,
that's
and I'm like, I
part
just
of
just became part of the
that's
Berkshire
part of the
family.
Berkshire Hathaway, portfolio. Is he got I think it was like if I remember correctly, the story with Airstream, he got one of the brochures from like, this is how you can customize one of your trailers. Like, here's all the options, here's everything. And then he arranged for a tour of the factory. He asked for a letter of the financials. And then like 90 days later, he submitted an all cash offer for the company because he was just really impressed with it. And he knew that, they had solid leadership. They had never had any kind of like financial problems, and they had a sound business model. Like they had developed their niche market, and one of the things that like he was really taken aback by was the fact that the main look of all their trailers has never changed. They've had painted ones before, but everybody knows an Airstream is a polished aluminum trailer. Different sizes. They made, motor homes, but the look of an Airstream has basically stayed, the iconic look, if you will, has stayed the same for like their entire 70-year existence. Like I can't tell you the model number. I can't tell you how long it is.
But you
But
can
if you were to
always
pull
look
an
at one and
Airstream in
be
front of
like,
me, I know, oh, well, that's an Airstream.
that's an Airstream.
That's an Airstream. So, and he realized that brand had inherent value. I mean, like I said, there's something to be said for that. But
yeah, I mean, and that's why he's, again, that's why he's Warren Buffett and we're not.
yeah,
It's one thing he is
that's
always
why you're Matthew Scott and I'm Steven Scott.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's
yeah.
why. And again, I don't necessarily harbor any resentment towards that, other than acknowledging that like most of us aren't as brilliant as that person, and that's
No.
that's
No.
okay. That's
Yeah, and that's
okay. I
okay.
don't expect anyone, but it's almost looked upon now, and this is where my disdain for American exceptionalism comes from. It's that like it sets the idea that like every bad thing that happens to a person is a result of some sort of personal failing.
It's a personal failing, or it's a series of choices, or they didn't push hard enough, or it was a lack of effort. And I hate that argument because sometimes, statistically speaking, you will walk across the street and you will be hit by a car. That's not a lack of effort. That's just bad luck.
It's bad luck, and it's also it ignores a lot of things where like we've accepted that some things are inherent, but other things are just automatically personal choices. And the juxtaposition I always use is test taking. Like we're at the point now where we can openly acknowledge that like, hey, someone can be really smart and brilliant and just be a bad test taker. Like if
Yeah.
I would admit I was actually a pretty good test taker. I got pretty far just on being able to, I could memorize things and I looked good on standardized tests.
Right.
But when it came down to really put pedal to pavement, or, put rubber to pavement, I did struggle with work ethic for a while. And it was something that I always thought was some level of personal failing. And it is something that you still have to address. But I've never understood how we can just easily acknowledge that, hey, sometimes that test taking is an inherent ability. It's a talent. You either have it or you don't. But we're not willing to acknowledge that work ethic is something that you either have it to this level or you
Right.
don't have it to this level.
Right.
It's not like we're not all born to go 24/7. We're not all Elon Musk. We're not born to work. Not everyone's born to want to work 60 hours a week.
Right. Or frankly, get by on like 4 hours of sleep a day.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. But I think, I mean, I think it's societal compulsion, and what I mean by that is, if you want things that society has deemed to be a indicator of success, you have to work for them. And there's some people like one of the things that I absolutely love is the story of immigrants that come here that deal with abhorrent situations to get here. And given enough time, effort, and resources, they become business owners. And one of the biggest issues I have,
Yeah, I mean
you know,
that's American Dream 101 right there.
right. One of the biggest issues I have is people that are anti-immigration. Uh, both of my, both of my father's parents, my paternal grandfather and grandmother were born in Europe, both. Neither one spoke English. Neither one had a high school education. Some of the jobs I've had in the past, working, always front of the house for a restaurant. I speaking of work ethic, there's no way I could cut it in the back of the house job. No way. Could never be a line cooker or a prep cooker. And there's no way. And frankly, that's not what my skill set is. My skill set is talking to people, being nice, socializing. That's my skill set. Somebody who's willing to leave large segments of their family behind, come across a desert, put themselves at risk, travel 1,800 miles or whatever the distance is, basically to cross Mexico, south to north, come into the country illegally. Those are people that we should want to embrace as citizens because they are giving up so much just to get here. Those should be the people that, we welcome you because you are the very definition of the tired and the poor yearning to be free. You're the definition of that. So we're going to welcome you. And so many on the right vilify them. And I've never liked that. And the reason that I've never liked that is because I could put myself in that position because I am only 2 generations removed from that.
Right. That and I think the one thing.
And I've hated that approach, and I've hated that vilification because it's like, wait a minute, you're gonna blame societal's ills in the fact that you can't find a good job on people that want to get here and better themselves. Because here's the thing, simply put, you're not looking to get a job working in the back of the house of a restaurant. You're not looking to be manual labor. You're not looking to work a construction job. You're not looking to work in agriculture production. You're not looking to work in meat processing. These are all jobs that by and large, born and bred American citizens have abandoned because the pay is too low and the work is too hard. And they're not willing to do it. And the rhetoric on the right about it, especially the build the wall.
But what makes that rhetoric so effective though?
Again, I think it speaks to that dog whistle, rugged individualism. The reason you don't have is because, and I think what it comes down to, the reason you don't have is someone else took. And here's the people who took. So they're the enemy. Don't blame yourself because it's a hell of a lot easier society-wise to not look at the failings of yourself as an individual when compared against others. And the sad thing is, they might not even be failings.
Also, yes, it's a lot of those things aren't even failings.
It's a lot of, look, if they, and it's a societal thing, if they have and I don't, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that they have and you don't. You can both be winners. You can both be losers.
The scarcity mindset. It's the myth of scarcity is the most pervasive argument that comes from any state.
Yes.
Comes from any state. Especially
any state, any country has that.
Especially this one. The idea that there's not enough money to go around is an absolute lie.
And I mean, the thing is, there's again, one of the things that I worked, like one of the things that I was amazed at was there was a guy where I was working. I used to be a server in Washington, D.C., and this guy, great guy, still occasionally talked, with his broken English and my broken Spanish, we still occasionally talk on Facebook. He came to this country initially illegally, got his green card. He owns 3 homes in Northern Virginia now. On paper, he's worth more than $1 million, which is more than what I'm worth.
Yeah.
And the reason that he was able to do that was because where I'm not willing to do that, every single dime that he could save, that he didn't have to spend on essential, basically life expenses, he saved everything. And again, this is the mindset that my grandparents had. You never throw anything away. It can be fixed. You never call in a professional. You learn to fix it yourself. I mean, my grandfather built the frames for the furniture that we grew up with. My grandmother did the upholstery. There was just something to be said for that.
And there is something to be said for that.
And this guy has that same mindset. What he did was he bought a fixer-upper, and it was like a 3-bedroom home, fixer-upper, like just needed updates galore. And at one point, there were 12 people living in a 3-bedroom home. 12 people. But the reason that he was able to do that, not all of them were his family, but they were all chipping in rent money.
Yeah, they were tenants. And his story
and they were all able to, and one guy knew, he told me, like, one guy knew electricity. He knew electrical. Another guy that was living there was a plumber. He knew plumbing. Another guy that was living there was paint and drywall. And he didn't collect money from them. He had them fix the house.
Yeah, I mean, it was the luck. I'll say
the
barter.
Luck. It's basically, and it's pervasive in immigrant communities. It's called the barter economy, where I can't give you money, but I can give you a service. I can give you a skill. I can give you something I know. And if you're willing to basically put a roof over my head, I can fix the roof.
I'm willing to let you live under it.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah. And he was, and basically what he was able to do is he was able to buy these fixer-up properties, and then in the span of about a year or two, turn around and sell them for about double what he bought for them.
Yeah, and that's not even the traditional immigrant story. Like, it's
no, but my point is with sharing this. Do you know what he still is to this day?
A line cook.
He is still a food runner. He is still working that job, and the reason he's working that job was because it puts cash in his hand every single day. He literally gets paid every day that he works. And he like I said, he owns 3 homes. One of them he's just completely renting out to another family. It basically pays the mortgage, and he said he makes like $200 a month is what he makes on it. That's like, after I pay my mortgage, I get $200. That's the profit on it. He's living in the second home, and he's fixing up the third. And I mean, like I said, this is a guy who he would make $100 to $120 a shift. There would be 9 servers tipping him out, 2 bartenders tipping him out. So you'd make between $100 to $120 a shift. He still works that job because it's the mindset. And by and large, the average American who complains about immigrants doesn't have that mindset.
I would say, I would go so far to say the average immigrant also doesn't have. I would say most people in general don't have that mindset. It is a difficult way to go. And again, that is across the board, across, racial, ethnic, religious lines. Most people don't have that mindset. And don't get me wrong, it is one worth celebrating, because it is fascinating to watch it in action.
That guy right there, he is somebody to literally be idealized. But the thing is, he doesn't look like me. He doesn't speak English the way I speak English. And one of the two major political parties basically vilifies him. And I guarantee that on the average, he puts more money into the system than the people that vilify him.
Oh, I'm
Guarantee from
absolutely certain that he does.
the economic impact that he has, he definitely puts more money into the system because he's paying property tax on 3 homes. I definitely guarantee that he puts more money into the system. I mean, but anyway.
But this is life out. But this is life outside the tower. But none of these people are in this lifestyle where they're making the rules. He's still playing by the rules. He's
Right.
I would consider him a top professional. Now a lot of times your top professionals are your athletes, your doctors, your lawyers, but they can come in various different
Yeah.
shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a top
Skill
professional.
sets. And
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing is, the older that I get, the more that I realize work ethic is definitely a skill.
See, it's something you can work
It
on, but
it is a skill. I mean, it is, and it's something that you can work on. But to me, you either have it or you don't.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's more of a talent. See, I look at it more of a talent than a skill. A skill is
Okay,
something
well,
you
I
can.
think we're using I think we're using two different words to describe
Yeah, but it
the
is
same
something
feeling.
you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And I would, when it comes to, especially at that level, it is something where like he has it, and it's something where where you look at it as a skill, and I look at it as at it as a talent. We're
No,
looking at
no,
it.
your word's better. I'll go with talent.
Yeah,
Your word's better.
but like you still, but even if you have the talent, you still have to. Michael Jordan had all the basketball talent in the world, but do you think he would have been a 6-time NBA champion if he wasn't out there shooting, 100 free throws every day?
No, no,
He still
because
had to do that to maximize
okay,
talent.
to use the Michael Jordan analogy, Michael Jordan was very upset when one reporter wrote that he was lackadaisical on defense. He took that personally.
And then he went out and won Defensive Player
Three
of the
years
Year.
later, he was NBA Defensive Player of the Year, and then he won that award 3 years in a row. I mean, then again, we're also talking about the guy who invented slights to motivate himself, for games.
But at the same time, no matter how much talent he had to play basketball, but he also had the work ethic. But he
Yes.
had the work ethic to keep to keep trying to improve it. By the flip side, someone else that we also idolize for God knows what reason, and you're going to call me sacrilegious here in a moment, Rudy Rudiger. Rudy Rudiger worked
Better
his
watch yourself with St. Rudy.
Rudy Rudiger worked his and even Rudy himself was like, I don't understand why I'm so famous. I played 3 plays. Like
Yeah.
I played 3
Well,
plays. All right.
yeah.
No matter how hard that guy worked.
That guy is the pinnacle to every poor Catholic growing up who wanted to play football.
Yeah.
He was a pinnacle for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I learned Notre Dame and Rudy Rudiger at the same time. They
Yeah,
had become synonymous.
but no matter how hard Rudy worked, he was never going to be a professional football player.
No.
And by that same token, no matter how hard Michael Jordan worked, he was never going to be a Major League Baseball player. Ever.
Yeah, but
like you and like work
yeah,
ethic
but
is something
there's
where
two
like you
different
have to
there's two
almost like
different
find the way
motivations
to
there too.
apply it. You must have
There,
to like find the where you want to apply that work ethic. And some of us, I mean myself included, I feel like I have a decent work ethic, but I have never found something that drives it. And I would say most people go their entire life never knowing what that is.
and
Or
that
oftentimes, you know what it turns into? Your kids.
that's and I was gonna jump on that, and I kind of want to switch gears after this, but one of the things that I kind of because I've had at this point in my life, I've had functionally, I've had three different occupations, three different careers in my point, or at this point. And, you know, I two of them simultaneously. Through a personal experience of my own life, I think I found it. 42 years old, and I think I finally figured out what I want to do. And the thing is, I went to school for history and political science, and I got a job working in elective politics, and then I realized it wasn't for me. And the reason that it wasn't for me, simply put, was I had a conscience. And I have to believe in what I'm trying to sell. And simply put, I was offered a great position working for a candidate in the southern state. And this was a candidate who, you know, was under the age of 40, ex-military, almost 6.5 feet tall, triathlete, blue eyes. And he was running on a family values campaign. Like, this is what we need to do. Massive cash advantage, 13.5-1 cash advantage. Last election, he ran, before I worked on his campaign, last election that he ran, he won 69% of the vote. He got all of his people, he got all of the people in the middle, and then he got a chunk of the other side, right? He's running on this family values campaign, and then I notice that, in my opinion, and you know, it's a standard campaign ad, and it's him, and he's walking with the you know, the typical American family, mom, dad, son, daughter. And I look and I'm like, is it me, or is he like really friendly with mom? And my field producer, who's my immediate boss, partner for the company I was working for, this guy's all of 5'7". I'm 6 feet tall. Grabs me by the arm, whips me around. I'm twice as heavy at this point of this guy. And he tells me that I am never to say that out loud again. And I am never to open my effing mouth like that again.
What, that he was friendly with his own wife?
Wasn't his wife. It was his mistress. This guy who was running a family values campaign, who was married and had kids of his own, I just discovered who he was cheating on his wife with. Just through human observation, literally just looking at the two of them and how they were interacting.
And it was the person he was pretending to be his wife in the campaign ad?
Well, no, like he's the elected official, and he's talking to, this is the American family, right?
Oh,
you know,
okay.
They were walking together.
So he was doing the chit chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were
okay.
walking talk. It was a walk and talk commercial, you know, just B-roll, walk and talk at a farmer's market, you know, like an outdoor farmer's market. And I just noticed that, wow, like he's really chummy with mom. And that's the only thing I said. And the reaction of my field producer let me know that, wow, I just discovered who he was having an affair with. And that was kind of the end of it for me. I mean, the thing is, like, I was offered a position working for him. It would have required me to relocate, and I had to say no. And the reason I had to say no was because I knew that the minute that this potentially could get discovered, I would be in a state that I'm not from, not knowing a lot of people, and politically ostracized. And this is post John Edwards. So this is after John Edwards' campaign imploded in 2008. And all of my friends who worked on his campaign then couldn't get jobs with either the first Hillary Clinton presidential campaign or the first successful then Senator, eventual President Obama campaign. So it wasn't an option for me. And then I realized, like, the argument then became, okay, this isn't an option for me. I don't think this is a career for me. Because I can't put, you know, my faith and my hard work and my effort into somebody who I might love the message, but if I can't buy them as a person, I don't care what the message is. You know, because if you're going to put yourself out there as literally a paragon of virtue, and then I find out you're not, I can't keep working for you.
I would say that is the one thing, and you're seeing it, ironically, you're seeing it this year. If there's any potential future benefit that I can say, hey, you know what? Trump opened the door for this. It would, one, relations with North Korea, because, well, keep your friends close. And two, the whole idea of this whole like family values, paragon of virtue in your personal life thing.
I hope it goes away.
Clearly not an issue anymore. Clearly not an issue anymore.
I hope it never comes back.
And you're seeing that with that race in North Carolina, which I think his name was Tom Tillis, where like straight up got busted with the mistress, and it has not hurt him in the polls at all. And I could be on the details.
No, and I mean even closer to home. Ed Fitzgerald, when he ran for governor, hey, why are you in a car with a woman who's not your wife at 2:30 in the morning? Really? We have to ask this question? I mean, come on.
And I mean, Ed's not doing anything politically relevant.
No, Ed's not doing anything politically. Either. Frankly, even with his campaign, I've seen snowballs that have had a better chance. Okay, and if you don't get my expression there, I've seen snowballs in hell that have had a better chance of winning than that guy.
Yeah, so
okay? Because nobody outside of Cuyahoga County and half the people inside of Cuyahoga County had no clue who that guy was.
Yeah,
let alone the rest of the state.
But yeah, I think the Trump life, thank you, Stormy Daniels, has just taken that argument,
Columbus, Ohio,
and just thrown it out the window where it belongs. Because if I'm going to be someone who harps on, you know, what you do in your private time and your personal time is your business, like I have to apply that to the people I don't like too.
Right. And I mean, here's the thing, and I'm not talking about his candidacy. I'm not talking about the person. But literally look at how Mitt Romney was treated. This is somebody who won't drink caffeine. Okay. This is somebody who's been married to one woman, has like 5 or 6 kids. And you figure like he might have like the perfect home life. And he got destroyed.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. I know there's other things, other topics we wanted to discuss. I kind of wanted to get into another segment here, talking about people who have disappointed you.
Yeah, this is about all the time we have left in the show. This is our heroes and heels of the week.
Yeah,
and I don't even know if we have any heroes for this week because we're coming up.
Well, you know what? We're going to add a guy because of what happened today. Okay, and you know he was definitely somebody that I kind of got a lot of enjoyment out of, and sadly 2020, God, I hate you.
Oh, it's a very shot day. They're very shot.
Sean Connery. I mean, he lived to be 90. I mean, he's one of those. I mean, it's your expression. He lived.
He lived. He lived. In all reality, like him, and in a similar sense with Burt Reynolds, like
7. I mean, what? Played James Bond 7 times. 7 times. And I mean, I was thinking about this, the pre-show, and I was trying to remember, like, I own 10 movies that guy is in. Granted,
they're not all winners. They're not all.
No. I mean, 7. Well, and when I say 10 movies, 7 of them are James Bond films. Okay, yeah, which is in a sense, it's the same story told 7 times.
And you can't have the resume of someone like him and like not have some stinkers in there. You're just going to.
But I mean, to me, I probably my favorite Sean Connery film. Just because of the story, Andy Jones' Last Crusade.
Yeah,
I mean, he
was
senior.
He was already playing the dad in what was that, 1987,
89.
Yeah, he was already playing the dad character.
Yeah,
in 1989, and like ironically, the first movie that I really remember him being in was Dragonheart. Like that was the first movie that I saw. I'm like, that's Sean Connery.
Not a bad film. Not a bad film.
It's definitely not a good film.
No, it's not a good film. I mean, the film, and like I said, I was going back to it, and I was thinking about the films that I own that he's in. Obviously, the 7 Bond films. he is, and he got the Oscar for it. He is amazing in The Untouchables. That little
Yes.
speech he gives with the Chicago law is just fantastic. Love him in that role. Um, I mean, he's got, to me, one of the most notable cameo roles ever when he shows up as the King of England in Robin Hood, the horrible Kevin Costner film. But I think it's just cool that like Sean Connery, who was openly for Scottish independence, always got to play the King of England, which is hilarious.
And he also played I think he was also the king in First Night as well.
He was. He was. Um, but then, talking about other movies with Sean Connery, I also love him, and he's a bit part in it. The Longest Day. I think it's just hilarious, because he kind of speaks to that, English determination, because he jumps off the landing craft into water that's twice as deep as he thinks it is. And as he gets off the landing craft, he yells that he's back, suggesting that he was either part of the troops that were evacuated from Dunkirk or he was part of the failed raid at Dieppe, which is just hilarious to me. It's that whole like, okay, you won this round, but we will be back,
Yeah, we're coming back for you.
But then the other role that I have to throw out there is I also own the movie Zardos. And if you want to see a movie that will burn images in your mind,
you will not forget Zardos.
You will not forget his outfit that he wears in that movie. It's going to be there, and you will never forget it.
If you haven't seen Zardos, go see Zardos.
Wow, that's all I can say is wow. But he was definitely, he was one of my heroes of the week, and like I said, that was kind of something that broke today. There's two heels of the week I have. The first heel of the week I have is a gentleman by the name, not a lot of people might not know this, gentleman by the name of Robert Murray. He founded Murray Energy, which was a coal company, St. Clairsville, Ohio, which is completely understandable if you've never heard of it. It's Southeast Ohio. It's Appalachia, Ohio. He died from complications of black lung at the age of 80. He started off as a coal miner, and he said he falsified his records. He started working in a coal mine when he was 16 years old. He eventually founded a coal company, and he sought to limit and fought against coal dust and black lung regulations for his workers. My dad's father was a coal miner in Pennsylvania. He died at the ripe old age of 66, 8 years before I was born, due to black lung. It would be one thing if Robert Murray held his position and fought against the regulations, but then a week before he died, he applied for black lung benefits. So Robert Murray, I don't in my life want to wish ill or harm on anybody. And I'm sure it is a loss to your family that you are no longer around. But I don't think anybody outside of your immediate family is going to miss you.
No,
except for Jim Renacci, which is absolutely horrible. Because I'm sorry, I find it abhorrent that people still want to people still think that coal is a good idea. And it's one of those things. You have the shirt on. I see it there. It says science.
Science!
One of the reasons that there's a limitation on the amount of fish that people should eat out of Lake Erie is because when you burn coal, you put mercury into the air. It is inevitable.
I know you love it. It makes you money. It's your job. What have you?
And the sad thing,
you're killing the planet.
From an energy efficiency point of view, it doesn't make money anymore.
Also,
it doesn't.
That's actually the biggest one.
Because and that's why coal companies are going out of business. They cannot compete with oil-fired power plants. They can't. Economically, it is a loser. That's why coal plants are being closed. everybody would like to chalk it up to environmental regulations. That's not the case. They're not fiscally competitive. They don't make enough money. So again, Robert Murray, CEO of a coal company who consistently fought against benefits for his workers, for black lung, who eventually came down with black lung and then applied for those very benefits that he tried to deny his workers a week before he died. Robert Murray, you, sir, are my heel of the week.
Number one. Heel of
Number
the week,
one.
number one. Who is your heel of the week number two, my friend? I feel like this one's a bit more obvious. But I feel like you could also always be the heel of the week, so we could always just throw this one out there. Has there been anyone with a bigger, like this dude was on top of the world 20 years ago and has just been in a steady decline ever since then? And I thought we knew where rock bottom was like 2 years ago. Like he has hit rock bottom. He hasn't.
No.
Has anyone fallen further than Rudy
Than America's
Giuliani?
mayor.
Than Rudy Giuliani.
Rudy Giuliani. The crazy rantings on Fox News aside, watch Borat's subsequent movie film. Watch the end of the film. Oh boy.
Like,
I thought the greatest, I'm not just you don't even have to watch the film, just although I find it hilarious. Google Rudy Giuliani Borat and it'll pull up. Dirty Old Man doesn't cover it. And I thought the greatest comeback was Sacha Baron Cohen saying, watch the film, he did what he did, and it wasn't provoked. And this is Rudy Giuliani, who, frankly, before he was the mayor of New York City, his claim to fame, he was the prosecutor that finally busted John Gotti. You know, he was the prosecutor that put the Teflon Don in jail. That's how he became the elected mayor of New York City. He vowed to clean up New York City, and he did. He said he was going to take the peep shows out of Times Square, and he did.
No, but just to be fair, crime went down nationwide.
Well, crime went down nationwide, but to be fair as well, it exceeded the pace of going down nationwide in New York City. It did. And furthermore, Times Square was a place to be avoided at night. Now it is like the number one tourist attraction.
It is
the
nightlife spot.
It is the number one attraction. With all of that said, his behavior in that movie is just abhorrent. And again, this is a guy who's a lawyer. If he really felt that he had a strong rebuttal, he would sue. It's on tape. He has no rebuttal. He has no defense for what he did. My second heel of the week is Rudy Giuliani.
And that is all the time we have for this first edition of Life Outside the Tower. We hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, be sure to give us a like, leave a comment below, hit the subscribe, click the bell, all that fun stuff. We'll be going back and looking through this and also breaking these up into little smaller videos for just easier consumption. We'll find the better bits of this. Again, like anything else that goes about 2 hours, it can't all be good.
Yeah.
Not everything's good. Not everything's going to be a slam dunk winner. But we're going to.
And this is EP1, first time out of the chute in 12 years as well.
Yeah, this is EP1, so we'll be doing this weekly on Saturdays here and getting this out. So, but we hope you guys have enjoyed it. We hope you have found some of this bits informative, and we hope we will see you guys next time. So, my name is Matthew Scott.
I'm Steven Scott.
And we will see you in the next video.
Take care.